Hello again, and welcome to the next edition of Canadian Genius. So, today I thought I'd talk about control. I've been talking about it off and on through the other videos, but I haven't really stopped to explain it as its own topic and give you a better understanding of why it is that we do what we do in the name of control. But first, we have to understand where it comes from. Now, control is a little bit harder to define because it doesn't come from just one place. And we get pieces of it from all over. Like, if you watch little kids play, it's very common when they get to about 6, 7, it's very common that we see them start telling their playmates what to do. This is how you're going to play. This is the game we're going to play. This is what we're going to do next. Right? And they get very, very upset when their playmates don't cooperate. But at that age, a lot of the behavior that they're starting to exhibit are stuff that they have picked up from other people. So control is kind of funny in that we do have this desire to have it because it gives us power, right? If we're in control of things, we decide what happens with them, which is what all of this garbage that we include as part of control comes into play, like the social contract, telling other people the expectation without involving them is purely a power trip, but that's control. And the reason it's considered a bad thing is the application of it. It's not that control itself is a bad thing, and that's where I think a lot of people get confused, is that we kind of talk about control like having control is bad. But there's elements of control that are quite useful and beneficial. A perfect example is having control of your emotions. It doesn't mean dictating them, as we discussed with fake emotions, but it's about allowing them to have power. One of my favorite expressions is that you can't be in control when you're out of control. And if you look at the methodology, in control means you, inside you. Out of control means exterior, outside of you. So you're in control when you're trying to control your actions and your methodology and your perception, but you're out of control the moment you try to control everybody else's. But we have this mentality in our head that it's easier to change the entire universe than it is to change one tiny thing in ourselves. And that's also about control. We don't want to change because realistically, that's a big element of control, is I know exactly what's going to happen. If I go and do this, this is going to happen. If I do A, it goes to B, goes to C, goes to D every single time. And unfortunately, that knowledge, that safety that we experience in knowing what's going to happen is very powerful because it gives us a sense of protection, even if it's detrimental. Right? We have a lot of women that are in abusive relationships, and that's one of the prime reasons they stay, is because of there's that sense of both familiarity and a sense of comfort in knowing the outcome. Of course, the problem is that that's an abusive relationship. The problem is it's very detrimental, but that's what happens with control when we don't face the rest of it, right? If we just look at control and go, meh, no big deal, then of course control can become life altering because we allow it to be, because we want those things that we get from it. And we never really stop to look at the price, right? It's like I get comfort in knowing exactly what's going to happen. I know that if I do this, this is going to happen. I have control over how the other person reacts. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people may not understand, especially with abused women, is there can often be a wonderful sense of, well, not wonderful, but a sense of passive aggressive tendency in there, right? That I'm going to piss you off on purpose to make you mad. Not that they want to get beat, not that they want to get hurt, but it's that they want that sense of control, right? They want to be the one that made you mad. And that happens in a lot of relationships, and not just like bigger relationships like boyfriend, girlfriend, married, whatnot. That people will get into that comfort zone, that pattern, and know if I do this, this is going to happen. And we have words for that. We have language for that. And we say pressing someone's buttons, right? Because we know that if I hit that, it's going to have that same effect every single time. Sorry, the camera's going yellowish again. I think it's just a lack of lighting. I'll try and better that later. But we get into that habit, and that gives us a tremendous sense of power, because it gives us this feeling like we're the puppet master, even though at the end of the day we're the ones that typically get punished for doing it, and there's often a lot of garbage that comes with it later. Right? You don't generally push someone's buttons and walk away scot-free. You usually get into trouble. But it gives us that ability to feel like we're the puppet master, that we're in control. So we got elements of control that we're born with, because we need to have that sense of power and strength and capability. I mean, we wouldn't have been able to survive without a sense of control, right? Just the ability to go from a society that basically followed the herds, that was migratory, to become a society of farmers. That, I think, was when control sort of really became a part of us as a people. Before then, you could control things, but that was the point that we started to look at control as a usable tool. But I think we've probably had it long before then, because otherwise we wouldn't have developed anything, right? Because that's part of control, is taking charge of your environment, taking charge of your survival. So control is a powerful thing and a good thing. But like everything, it gets out of whack when we're not honest about what it is and what we're doing with it. So control is also really difficult to change, because it's something everybody else does, right? So this makes it very complicated. We get so much from it. We have so much hidden vested interest in it. We get a lot of power from it. But it's also wrecking our lives and destroying our relationships and making it hard to be with other people. But if you look at it, we've opted to be isolated. We've opted for that anonymity, right? Like I keep saying, that's a big, big, big thing. And I think because, again, we feel so vulnerable around things we don't know. That's why that power of knowing is so important to us. If we go out on a date with somebody we've never met, we have no way of knowing exactly what they're going to do. But if we stay in an abusive relationship, we know exactly what that other person's going to do. And so there is so much more power in us to stay in that abusive relationship. And there's so much more power in us to stay and hide at home than go out and find somebody new. And another saying that I like to use all the time is that the hell you know is better than the paradise you don't. And that's very accurate. It is exactly what I'm talking about. That we get into that zone of comfort, of control, of knowing, and we get so much power from it and so much diverse pleasure. And we don't, again, we're not admitting to it, we're not paying attention to it, but we do it, that we sacrifice everything else to maintain it. And that's why I wanted to talk about control as its own entity. Because as long as we're willing to kind of try and, again, be out of control and ignore being in control, then that is always going to perpetuate, right? It's always going to happen. And that's a big, big problem, because not only is it wrecking our lives, it's wrecking the lives of everybody around us. Because you can't perpetuate an idea and it then change into something positive. Right? It's no different than if you're at work and you have an abusive boss and then you get promoted to be the boss and then you abuse people just like you were abused yourself. Right? You can't do that and then have that become positive. You could certainly get promoted to that position and not perpetuate the control and the issues and stuff. That's possible for sure, but you can't go and start doing it and expecting a different result. Right? You can't be like, well, okay, it didn't work when he did it, but I'm going to do the exact same thing and expect something different to happen. I mean, that's even the definition of what we have for insanity, right? Doing the same thing the same way and expecting different results. But we do that all the time. And again, control. Right? The more that we feel that we have control of everyone and everything, the less we need to worry about ourselves. And that's really why we do it. As kids, we do it because we see everybody else doing it. We don't understand what it is. But unfortunately, by the time we start to get to the point of development where we can now begin to wrap our heads around it and understand it, we have so many years of history doing it, it really isn't easy to change. Because now we have to justify that history. And that's one of the big things with why we never, ever, ever want to openly change. We change constantly, but we don't admit to it because we have this idea that if I admit to this, if I want to change out of this habit, of this pattern, I now have to justify all the garbage and junk and bad decisions I've made on it for the history of my life. And that isn't true. You have to sort of acknowledge it. You have to be willing to accept it, right? Make it okay. You know, it's okay that I did that because I was learning. As I said in one of the other videos, I was an arrogant, self-righteous asshole. And I just abused the hell out of one of my friends. And later, when I kind of got this concept and I realized how much I had done, I didn't go and beat myself up for it. I regret terribly that I hurt my friend and we don't have a friendship because of me. That really bugs me, even now. But I made it okay. Because for me, that was part of my journey of self-discovery. If I hadn't done that, then maybe I wouldn't be who I am today. And we have to look at that, right? The path that we take to become who we are isn't going to be smooth and flower-filled. There's going to be rocks, there's going to be twigs, there's going to be branches flicking us in the face, because that's life. And we have to accept that. So we have to say, okay, you know what? I don't like that I did that, so I'm going to change it. But it's okay that I did it because of what I got. It's very common that people look back at their lives and go, you know, I wish that didn't happen. But if we look at ourselves honestly and we're willing to take control inside and admit what we got from it, like there's been lots of bad situations in my life that I wish didn't happen. But then I look and say, okay, well, what did I gain from it? You know, it's like maybe I met a new friend, or maybe I discovered something new about myself, or I opened up a new door of discovery, or found a different kind of job that I would have never had otherwise. Right? Just something that came of that. Without that bad experience, you couldn't have had that experience, which wouldn't then lead to anything else you get off of that experience. So even one little tiny thing changed, and your life would not necessarily be what it is today. And we have to understand that. Right? It's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing either. It's just a thing. Right? As I keep going on and on about balance, neutrality is a powerful tool. Because if you can take your mind off of all these good and bad judgments and just say, it is what it is, then it becomes neutral. And in neutral, there's a tremendous power because you're not juicing from it. You're not taking control from it and getting that puppet master power. But you're also not destroying yourself. You're not putting other people down or telling other people they suck or telling yourself that you suck and demeaning yourself. So being in that middle ground is a really wonderful safe zone because it is what it is. It's okay that it was that way. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not hurting myself. I can now choose of my own accord what to do next. And that's power. That's real power. And that's in control. But because we don't understand that, because we don't get that concept, because let's be honest, how could we possibly when no one around us is doing it? There's a lot of people that claim to, that, you know, say they don't control, but really, if you look at it, like even when I was a terribly shy kid, I was in control, right? I dictated that I was going to be that shy. I didn't know it at the time. I wasn't prepared to acknowledge it at the time, but I'm the one that allowed it to occur. You could say, well, you were a kid, you didn't have a choice. That's true to a point, but I had a choice to perpetuate it, right? I may not have had a choice to do it when I was 5. I may not have had much of a choice to do it when I was 7, but by the time I was 12, by the time I was 20, it was me that decided to keep doing it, right? I couldn't have changed it overnight, but I could have certainly worked on changing it. I could have worked on making it better, but I didn't, not until I was in my early 20s, because I just didn't have enough experience to know better. But that's important because, again, we have to be willing to accept our responsibility in that, right? I chose to be shy because I gained a lot of power from it. I gained a lot of protection. I didn't interact with people. I didn't socialize with anybody. I stayed by myself most of the time. I had my couple of good friends that would never hurt me. I was protected and isolated and alone. But that's the problem if you're not looking at the consequence. right? And it's really hard to look at the consequence if you're not prepared to look at it at all. So that's why control is so complicated, because it's one of the worst things to look at, but is the most powerful and beneficial things to look at. And that dichotomy is what makes it so complex. Right? It's something that we're born with, but it's also something we learn over time. It's something that we could change at any moment, but something we're unwilling to even look at. But again, that's the thing about control, right? And I'm going to keep using that expression. In control, inside, out of control, outside. That is the best way to look at control. And it doesn't matter if you're the boss or an underling, right? We have this idea that our bosses are supposed to be rigid, determined, stiff, militaristic humans. Well, if you're in the military, that works. If you're not in the military, that doesn't work. And what's the thing you hear all the time with those militaristic bosses, right? Well, you can't make steel without pounding on it. Stress makes things stronger. They have all these analogies that they've used, but they don't understand. It's like, yes, for me to make steel strong, I have to hammer it. But there's a fine line that if I hammer it too much, it shatters. So that analogy only works if you put the rest of it into place. That yes, it's okay to push, it's okay to ask for more, but it's not okay to pound for more. Right? And the same idea the other way, that, stress is good. Yes, stress on the human body is a wonderful way to develop and grow. That's how we build muscle tone. That's how we develop mental capacity. That's how we do all these things through stress. That's what we're calling it, right? You stress your muscles when you're working out. You stress your brain, right? You stress your thought process. That's the terminology for a reason, because that's what it is. We're stressing those things. Same issue though. You go beyond that point and everything breaks, right? I can stretch my muscles and strengthen them little by little and get really good results. Or I could go and grab a 500-pound weight and absolutely shatter my muscle and never be able to use my arm again. Right? It's all about balance. And because again, nobody else is doing it, how could we expect anybody to do it? Right? So how could our bosses understand that they're being assholes because they're trying to break you instead of looking at that they're good? But that raises another point, especially about control, is when I was in high school, I had a job working at a gas station, and I actually got fired because the boss thought I was after his job. I was in high school. I didn't even care about the job. I was just there because I needed something to do. But one thing I had learned in my life is that I do get control of me, right? I'm in control. So when I go to work, doesn't matter what I'm doing, whether it's these videos, whether it's working for someone else, whether it's working for myself, I am a firm believer that money is not mine. Because I'm borrowing it from my landlord, I'm borrowing it from the grocery store, I'm borrowing it from the electric company. It's not mine. But the pride in my work is mine, right? If I go to work and I hate my job, I'm accountable for that. If I go to work and I hate my job, but I make the best of it, I win because I made the best of it, right? Doesn't mean I love it, doesn't mean I hate it. I just put it in that neutral zone, right? And it makes it okay. And so because I would do that where everybody else hated it, he thought I was after his job and he fired me for it. And he openly admitted to it. But unfortunately, under the law of the land, I'd only worked there for just under 3 months, so I could be fired for any reason. So he literally could have fired me because I was white. He could have fired me because I was a redhead. He could have fired me because I had glasses. And there's nothing I could do about it. And I actually did file a grievance, and that's what I was told, right from the employment standards. They didn't use the analogy of white, but they did use the glasses and the redhead and all of the other stuff. So, and that bugged me because it hurt me, and it had no bearing in reality. Now, 5 years later, if I had still been there, might I have wanted his job? Well, if I was there for 5 years, something would have been wrong. But maybe. So that's, like I said, we get into this sense of control and we use it to hurt other people in the defense of ourselves. And bosses do that all the time, right? Especially supervisors, because they're so afraid of losing their job to somebody else. that they make sure nobody else could do their job. And I once, not that long ago, I was doing some schooling, and I did working on a Bachelor of Management degree. And one of the textbooks that they had, I was reading about management itself, they had talked about that they had actually gone and done a study and looked at the new managers, like there was, I don't know, 20 or 30 of them or whatever, that they followed for the first year of being new managers, right? That went from worker to manager or supervisor, whichever field, but followed them and watched what kind of things they went through, what emotions they went through, what experiences they went through, what difficulties and what successes. And every single last one of them spent the first 6 months proving, I'm the boss, I'm in control, I'm the one that you listen to. And then the next 6 months apologizing for it. Every one of them. Because that's exactly how we operate, right? We have this mentality that the boss has to be the king, the queen, the emperor, the ruler, instead of realizing that they're the supervisor, which is the whole point that the textbook was trying to make, is that as a leader, as a manager, your role isn't to tell them how to do their job. They know how to do their job. Your job is to make sure it happens, to, give them that extra motivation, to make sure that when a problem arises, someone is there to fix it. That if something isn't working, someone is accountable to make it better, right? That's kind of the role. But that's not the role we assume. And even people that are taught that, even people who learn that, don't do that. Because there's lots of programs out there that teach a lot of this stuff, that teach people how to become supervisors, how to become managers. And they say all of the same stuff and have for years. So then why do the people do it? And it's because of that sense of control, right? I want to be in control. I want to keep my job. I want to make them impressed. And so what am I going to do? I'm going to try and make you work better. Instead of making sure that nothing, work doesn't decrease, I'm going to try and double it. Well, what a stupid idea that is. And the best thing to do in every situation, if you ever find yourself in that, ask yourself, what would happen if somebody did it to you? Right? And I'm not just talking in work and being a boss. I mean in every situation. It's the best advice that I have to deal with in control, out of control, is look at yourself as if someone else was doing exactly what you're doing or going to do to yourself, right? So if you were going to push somebody, look at how you're going to push them. And then imagine another person is pushing you in exactly the same way. And even if you don't do it before, even if you do it after and reenact the same thing with you doing exactly what you did, but now to yourself, and see how you react, you'll see that you react just as badly as other people do when they react. Because we push back when people tell us what to do. Even when they're their bosses, even when they have the so-called authority over us. They don't, right? If I am a boss, I have a responsibility to my staff. I do not own them. I do not control them. Anyone that does, well, in the States, there's wonderful things called lawsuits that really quickly educate people on that ain't the reality. I'm Canadian. We don't have those because we don't have the big issue with punitive damages. But, there are people in the States that, literally sue for like $10 million, more money than they would ever have made in their entire lifetime because people do that to them, right? And win. So even with all the lawsuits and all the stuff, and it's being very commonly known, people still do it because we don't get out of that sense of control. And again, like I've been saying from the beginning, it's because we gain power from that control. And until we're prepared to realize that that power isn't real, that that's just control. Power comes from that sense of neutrality. That because, like I said before, with looking at energy and stuff, right? Our issues sap our energy. If I'm in control, what do I have to be? I have to be tight. I have to be rigid. That takes a lot of energy. Just sit, do this. Crunch your head. Don't hold them. Push them. See how my hands are shaking? Push them. Do that for 1 minute, and you'll be exhausted. That's how much energy that takes. Now do the same thing with 1,000 other things in your head. Same issue. It takes a tremendous amount of energy that we then have to spend. And then there's nothing left for the rest of us. right? If we're on the other side, that we're getting attacked and we're feeling stepped on and walked on, what do? We have to spend the energy blocking and defending and pushing away. Just as much energy, right? That neutral ground is the place of freedom, because I don't have to defend, I don't have to attack, I don't have to be anything other than what I am as I am. I can be me. And that's why it's so powerful. But if we don't accept that control is the thing keeping us away from ourselves, if we don't understand the things that we're paying for control, if we don't understand what control itself is and why it is, then we're in trouble. So again, the biggest things I want you to take away are, you don't have to justify the past. The past is the past. You have to acknowledge it and accept it. That's it. You don't have to defend against it, you know? And there is nothing wrong with going up to another human being and saying, you know what, I owe you an apology. I was a dick. I didn't understand. I didn't connect. I didn't realize it until yesterday. And now that I do, I am so sorry. I'm going to do better. But that, if you look at it, every single person watching this probably went, because it's one of the things we're most afraid of. Because again, the hell you know is better than the paradise you don't. I know exactly how they're going to react when I smack them down. I have no idea how they're going to act when I apologize to them. No. So we have to accept that and break through that and go, you know, there really is only 3 outcomes. It stays the same, it gets worse, it gets better. Logically, it stays the same as about 80% of reality. 10% is it's going to get better and 10% it's going to get worse. So when you go and talk to somebody, there's a 90% chance that you're going to at least have nothing bad happen. The fact, well, it's 10%. 10%, people have risked their entire careers on 90%. People have changed their entire lifestyle on stupid things that they had a 90% chance of success. This is something that actually can better your life and better their lives and make everybody happier. That doesn't seem to me like much of a risk, right? There's a right way to do it and a wrong way, but until you're prepared to be honest with yourself and accept you for who you are, all good and bad included, then you'll never be able to do that. So that's kind of a good stepping stone, right? If you can get to that point where you go and have that neutral territory and are just happy to exist in yourself, then you've come a tremendous way from getting over control. And I think that's really why we're evolving out of control, is because, you know, we're paying this tremendous price for it constantly, and people are getting it, but they just don't have the permission to change it. They just don't know it's okay to go down a different path. That's again why I keep trying to make some of these videos, is to give people that permission to say it's okay. Because until somebody does, it's not going to be okay. So if I'm saying you it's okay, and you see someone else in the same boat, let them know it's okay too, right? Whether you go to direct them back to this video or not, that's up to you. But just to say, you know, hey, it's okay that you do that. You don't have to go into detail. Just say it's okay. Gives them permission. It's a powerful thing. You would really be amazed at how much of a difference your life is if you just accept that you're allowed to do things and give other people that same ability, that allow them to be able to do things for themselves too. You can't imagine how freeing it feels. You just don't have to expend that energy on useless junk. So I hope you found this interesting. I think I am going to say from now on, you know, if you found this video interesting and like it, please like and share. I haven't done that, and as I said in the other video, because I didn't want to, but I really don't think this is going to grow and evolve. The research has said very clearly that if you don't tell people to do something, they won't. So instead of expecting everybody to kind of just all of a sudden change from who they are, I'm going to ask. So if you do indeed like my videos and you found them of any value or use, please like them and share them with other people so that they can have the same benefit that you got. So I'm going to do that from now on. So thank you very much for listening. I hope to see you next time.